This is the closest I can get to divination and the Maya calendar. Even though this lecture is in a series on divination. And so here you see a moment of divination showing up. And I think this is about as good as the scholars and the popular people have gotten to divining that the Maya calendar actually predicts an end of the world. Because I think what we know now is that none of that is true. And we'll talk about that during this lecture. In preparing for this talk, I looked at a lot of cartoons. There's a lot of cartoons. It's going to freak somebody out someday. It certainly is freaking them out now. Here's another one, literally translated. It says, "We're toast" in 2012. We know that research has taught us that the Maya, well, they had many calendars, but there were 3 calendars in particular. There was this Solkin, the divinatory calendar, 260 days. There was the Hob, the administrative solar calendar, 360 days with 5 dangerous days, which is very important. But the one that's got everybody freaked out is the long count, it's cumulative. And the long count really is a count that imagines a cosmic creation that happened long ago. On the date, it's calculated as August 11, 3114 BC. Long count means that since that time, there have been 13 cycles of 144,000 days, with the 13th ending in 23 days from now on December the 21st, 2012. Now, does this constitute or mark an apocalyptic moment or event in either Maya thinking or prophecy? That's the question. And there have been conferences all over the country about this, and all the scholarship says no. All the scholarship says that there was no prophecy in any of the surviving glyphs or documents that suggest that the Maya thought that this was going to be some sort of catastrophe in their world or anybody's world. But today, there's more than 1,500 books that can be purchased online or from local bookstores claiming that the Maya prophesied an apocalypse. More than 1,500 of these books. It's been well researched. A recent publication from the Journal of Archaeology and Culture, Archaeoastronomy and Culture has shown this. And let me just, John Carlson, one of these, writes in harsh judgment, "The public craving for esoteric apocalyptic secrets and millennial visions, ranging from catastrophic Armageddon to the dawning of an enlightened new age, are being fed," and here's a pretty good phrase, "by a virtual army of these feathered snake oil salesmen, as many await the return of the plumed serpent Quetzalcoatl, the Maya Kukulkan, on December 21st, 2012. Now, this group of scholars who really have very good Maya scholars have decided that they would have a conference and they would try to figure out how did this rumor that the Maya had an apocalypse in mind or an end of time in this significant heavy way in mind when they were alive, when their culture, the classic culture, was really going. And what they came up with was that we have no record or knowledge that the Maya would think the world would come to an end in 2012, says Susan Milbrath. Willis Anders says there will be another cycle. We know the Maya thought there was one before this, and that implies they were comfortable with the idea of another one after this. So this group of scholars who went back through the scholarship for the last 50 years to try to find out where did the idea first come that the Maya themselves thought that there was going to be this apocalyptic change in 2012, and they found out where it was. The offending passage appears in Michael Coe's first version of a book called The Maya, published in 1966, that you could buy then for $2.95. He was comparing the Maya sense of time with the expansive notion of Hindu kalpas, and he writes, quote, "There is a suggestion that Armageddon would overtake the degenerate peoples of the world, and all creation on the final day of the 13th Baktun. The universe will be annihilated on December 24th, 2011. He later, in another edition, he changed it to what is the more correct date, December 21st, 2012. So what they've shown is that Michael Coe, by the way, is a top-notch, very fine scholar, young at the time. He's trying to interpret this for people. It's really a trade book almost. And what he decides to do is to suggest that the Maya themselves were thinking of an Armageddon at the end of this calendar cycle. What's been shown now is that it just is not true. And the more I look at this, there's no evidence. One of the most impressive possibilities is this particular page from the Dresden Codex, which people have looked at, where you have the sky serpent and he's pouring out all this water onto the earth. And so people are saying, well, this is the great deluge, this is the end of the world, and so forth. And in fact, in a very fine article by Eric Velasquez Garcia, he really is able to contextualize this page and to show you that, in fact, in Maya thinking, in Maya communities, they were concerned periodically about cosmic changes, floods, earthquakes, and so forth, as I'm going to show you in a minute in the Aztec case. But there's no association of that with this particular date. And the only other piece of evidence that is possible, and I'm sure some of you have heard this before, comes from this Tortuguero Monument 6, where you have a text over here that is one of the few texts, one of maybe the two texts that mentions the end of the long count in 23 days. And at one point, David Stewart, who's a very fine scholar, wrote an article years ago where he used the idea of a prophecy in relationship to this. And a lot of people picked it up in popular, and he writes now, upon more reflection, and after looking at a number of comparative examples, I now can lend my full support for Steve Houston's analysis, as well as his assertion that no prophetic statement about 2012 likely exists in Monument 6 inscription. Which leads me, to say that it's amazing how much mileage has been gotten out of this particular passage that came from Michael Coe and has been picked up really much more in the popular press. But another scholar who looks at this, John Hoops, says this text appears to be about the investiture of a deity possibly associated with cycles of creation and rebirth. Now compare that with what I gave you from the Bible about a real apocalyptic thinking. And I think you can see why I both find this interesting, but also, I find it to be not where we should be putting our time. It looks like the next prophecy may come from this. The chief says, just take it to 2012. That's when we switch to the Dilbert calendar.